Hello and welcome to Expats Everywhere. Could you tell us your name and a little about yourself?
Hi, my name is Jim McCarthy. I've been living in Singapore for about 1.5 years. Prior to that, I lived in North Carolina for about 10 years, and much of my family is from the East Coast.
Sweet, so you're living in Singapore. Are there any other countries that you've lived in?
Mostly the U.S. On the East Coast. When I was a child, my dad was in the Army, so we moved around a lot, and I spent a few years in Puerto Rico.
That's awesome. And could you tell us what you do?
I'm a business improvement specialist, so I help improve processes and streamline a lot of our manufacturing processes.
Are there a lot of English-speaking expats in Singapore?
Yes.
And what do they do? Similar jobs?
I think many the expats that I know work in the finance sector. So many of them do, I guess, financial kind of work. Many of them are accountants or consultants and things like that.
What do you do day to day? What's a typical day look like at work?
The days in manufacturing, so I support manufacturing. So they usually start with some kind of morning meeting where we'll meet and we'll talk about the things that happened over the night. That's a 24-hour operation. There's all sorts of different things could be happening. So we could be looking at the status of a project, or reviewing timelines for different projects, or just having just various different meetings with multiple different groups to maybe solve some kind of problem that's happening right now, or some kind of initiative that we want to kick off in the near future.
What is the expected salary range for someone in your position?
There's a lot of variability, but I would say 60 up to maybe 120, so it's anywhere in that range. There's a lot of variability there.
Okay, so let's talk specifically about the low range right now.
Okay.
60, is that enough to live on? And what type of lifestyle can you live?
You know, the housing here is can be a little bit expensive, but you can also find things called HDBs, which were developed by the government, and so they're from something called the Housing Development Board, or HDB. It's for Singaporean citizens, and there are some Singaporean citizens that rent these out. So if you're in a salary range, something like that, you can easily live in a place like an HDB, which would be slightly less expensive. Now, as you get higher up in salary ranges, they have condominiums and things that are available. But yeah, so I think that's very livable, both in your housing that you might choose, as well as other things. So there's plenty of restaurants where you can spend lots of money going out to eat, and there's also local hawker centers where you can spend 5 Singapore dollars, so about $4 American, getting a nice meal.
Nice.
Yeah.
So looking at housing, where do you live? Do you live in an HDB or a condo?
Right now I'm living in a condo.
Okay, and have you ever lived in an HDB?
I haven't.
Haven't, okay. So we've heard some stuff about expat packages. Could you tell us a little bit about an expat package and what we should expect if we are offered an expat package?
Sure. So right now I do not have an expat package. So for me, I'm here on a permanent relocation. But for someone with an expat package, they usually offer things that are related to housing. Either they fully pay for your housing, or they might pay for a portion of it. And they also may offer some other things, so some things related to some kind of per diem, potentially for meals and things, even things like a vehicle so you can get around. So people with an expat package generally have those things. They also generally have a contract, which has some finite time range on it, which could be anywhere from 1 to 2 years. What I usually hear is 2 years. What I've also heard is that in many cases those expat contracts get extended, so you can continually renew those. So I know a few expats that are on their 4th or 5th 2-year contract that continually gets renewed.
Wow, so it sounds like a pretty good gig if you have an expat contract with all the benefits.
Yeah, it sounds. Yeah, I think if you have an expat package, it's something that can be that can allow you to go somewhere new, experience new things, and at the same time maintain some financial stability.
How do you meet other people, and what's there to do? What can you do for fun?
So I think one of the best things to do is to get out, and so there are lots of groups and places within the community where you can go. They have community centers where you can sign up for classes and meet lots of people. So I think there are a lot of internet resources where you can find people with similar hobbies, whether whether that's something like you enjoy dragon boat racing or rock climbing or any other kind of sport or activity, or if you like things like chess, or even if you just want to learn a language, if you want to learn French or Spanish or Chinese. They have groups that meet and discuss those kind of things. And through that process you can meet people and make friends, start to expand your social network in the new place that you're living.
It's awesome. So I know that you're quite a salsa dancer. How did you get involved in that?
I do some dancing as well, and so I went to a site on Facebook that's called Where to Salsa in Singapore. And so on that website, they give a lot of information about classes that you can take and social events that you can attend.
Listen, changing gears here, what can you tell us about safety? Is Singapore safe, and how do you feel about safety on a personal level?
I think Singapore is a very safe place to live. Culturally, very much values safety, and so I know that it's something that's very, very important to people here. And so I think of all the places I've lived, Singapore is the place that I think on a personal level I've certainly felt the safest.
Okay, have you had any incidents?
No.
Well, what can you tell us about Singapore as a travel hub? Do you think that Singapore is a good travel hub? Why or why not?
I do. So Singapore is a wonderful travel hub to get around Southeast Asia. So from Singapore, you can travel to a lot of nearby countries, whether that's Vietnam or the Philippines or Indonesia or Malaysia or Thailand. And many of these places are just a few hours away, maybe 1 or 2 hours. Kuala Lumpur is only 45 minutes from here on a flight. And so it's very easy to travel to nearby places and see museums and see all sorts of really interesting things that that in the U.S. you don't typically get to see.
What's the coolest place that you've been since living in Singapore? Where have you been able to travel?
I've been to 8 countries so far. So I visited India, I visited Indonesia, Vietnam, I visited the Philippines, Malaysia, Japan. I think of all the countries I've visited, the most memorable experience was on top of a live volcano called Mount Bromo, and it's in Indonesia. And I took a jeep out there to get to the base of the volcano. And many of these things that I'm telling you are very cheap, so they're very inexpensive to be able to do these kinds of adventures. And then you could ride horseback partway up the volcano, and then it's just a short climb to the top of the volcano, and it was pretty amazing looking into the volcano and looking out beyond and seeing all the other mountains and things around. So that was probably the most memorable trip so far.
About how much did that trip cost?
That would probably cost about the total trip. It involves some other traveling as well. So there's a nearby place called ljen Crater that I saw as well. And it also involved a hotel stay. And so the entire trip altogether, including the hotel stay, I think it was 3 days, 2 nights, was something to be around probably $250 American.
So to wrap this up, could you tell us a couple pros and cons of living in Singapore?
There are a lot of pros. So people value relationships, and so they very much value harmony, they value relationships, and so the relationships that they have with people are very important to them. And so what you won't see a lot of is conflict. You won't see a lot of people that have a tendency to argue, certainly not publicly. That's very, very rare. So I think one of the really nice things about here is that people value relationships. They value harmony. I think that many people like to socialize over a meal, so I think that's a very nice thing as well. So in some other countries, a popular way to socialize might be at a bar or something like that, whereas they do have that here, but in many cases people like to socialize over a meal. I think one more really nice thing here is the high level of diversity in Singapore. So this really is a cultural melting pot. There are people from countries from all over the world. I've seen people from Spain, from France, from England, from Australia, from all over Asia, from China and from the Philippines and from Malaysia and Indonesia and India and just all over, Americans, Canadians, Mexicans, people from South America, from all over the world, and they're all here in one area. And so I think one of the beautiful things is that people that are from different cultures and different environments can help each other see things a little bit differently, just by virtue of the fact that we grew up a little differently. So I think that's a really positive thing. One thing that might be a con is that I think, so the weather here is warm all year round. We're 80 miles north of the equator, about 80 miles, I think, north of the equator. And so one con is that during the rainy season, which is what we would often refer to as winter in the U.S., during the rainy season, I think there's a tendency for more flu bugs and viruses and just stuff to go around. And so one thing that you might see coming to Singapore is that you might get ill, you might fall sick. Just because there's some of those bugs and things out here that you may not be accustomed to if you're from another area. I certainly experienced is that you may get a few bugs, but I promise you they have really good doctors here, and those doctors can certainly get you fixed up.
So all in all, Jim, it sounds like Singapore is a great place to live. Listen, we want to thank you so much for meeting with Expats Everywhere and giving us insight into Singapore today. We appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure, and good luck with everything.